Welcome to Order Militaris Radio TV. We here are lifelong Catholics, and what we do here is all for free in love of Jesus Christ, the Most Holy Trinity, and His Holy Church. And will defend our Holy Mother, the Church. Our work is the true sense of apostolate. Any funds raised goes back into this work for equipment. This helps us to grow and give you an unbiased, hard-hitting truth that is not controlled by political correctness or interest groups. Today's topic is the Catholic Party of America regarding the state of Kansas. And we welcome Brother Alexis Bonello to host the show.
Thank you, AJ, for having me on. And I love this program we do every week on Catholic politics, especially encourage the Catholics of the United States to start and join the Catholic Party of America, because America won't last without a Christian party and all the problems we have in the United States because we don't have one. But the wonderful thing about the Catholic faith is that since we believe God became man, and that just didn't become your generic man, he became a Jew, he became a member of a human family, of a nation, of its culture. And if you read the Gospels, you see that Jesus loved being what he was what he became as man. He wasn't a no borders guy. Everyone's the same. He wasn't that way. He even said to the apostles, "My mission is to the people of Israel. It's your mission to go out into the rest of the world." So the Christian faith has always inspired naturally a politics that loves its own land. Christian.
Okay, so we must have atheist censors now. Okay, censors, knock it off, let them back. Talking to you censors out there. You're just gonna what's Dixie, you're gonna pull them pistols. Sorry. So, yeah.
Do you have me back?
Yeah.
Where did they cut me off?
Talking about how you were talking about the politics. Now Christians love their land and their freedom. And...
Oh, I guess I said absolute heresy for globalists. Yeah, so Christianity naturally causes you to love your own land, your own people, your own culture, your own language. Yes, for every land and every people. And so consequently, the Christian Party of America in Kansas would be particularly Kansan, okay? And I have been to Kansas back in 2000. I was in Kansas for a few days. So it's not that I've never been to Kansas, but I haven't really even tasted what it is. But I have looked at many places in Kansas, and Kansas seems a wonderful place to live. But the Democrat and Republican parties have made Kansas, have given Kansas so many problems, and we're going to talk about that today. What are the big problems in Kansas, and how would the Christian Party of America change that? And so let's get down to how these two parties are attacking the native people of Kansas. First of all, in education, because public schooling is a great idea, but when it's controlled by ideologues, it's the worst thing that can possibly be. So, AJ, you are, I won't say a product of Kansas education, because you are a book reader. We used to call mine when I was young a bookworm. You're a reader of books, so you've taught yourself probably more than you learn in public schools. But that gives you a good point of view to assess what is Kansas education like. So,
okay. Well, Kansas education is, well, you you learn your math, reading, writing, all that. But then in history, you have your American history textbook, your world history textbook, but then you also have your Kansas history textbook. And I must say the two other textbooks, the world and American history, are has a lot more information in it, but when you come to Kansas, it only has the basics. It doesn't tell you the history of the area, of the towns that were here. It doesn't tell you about the famous people who were here. That's where I think that textbook, I think from the 70s, I think it was from the 70s, if I remember how the cover looked. It had some good details, but then during the school, when it was the time to celebrate the Kansas Day or celebrate the history of Kansas, when it became a state, it was like you didn't go nowhere to actually experience what Kansas was like before or when Kansas became a state. You did stuff in the gymnasium. You couldn't really wear 6 guns because, well, back then it was a gun-free zone, so you couldn't even wear a cap gun. And so, and learning about this area where we live was straight west of Oakley, Kansas, due west, is what was the town of Sheridan. Now, we were thinking it was straight north of here due to the GPS coordinates, but the coordinates are wrong. It's just due west. And that place was loud because, well, there was not hardly much any law in this area back then. It was, but in this book, The Ghost Towns of Kansas, describes almost, I think, over 100 ghost towns in all of Kansas, and it has actual uh, news news reports and eyewitness accounts from people who went to Sheridan or came through on the stage or the train, and it's it's actually sounds very exciting, but it would be a great thing to revive and restore and rebuild because the only thing left is a house at, from this from this old town. And so it reads, Sheridan was the terminus of the Kansas Pacific Railroad for nearly 2 years. During that time, over 2,000 people congregated there. The town was the host to every bad element on the Kansas plains, including gamblers, horse thieves, buffalo hunters, murderers, and ladies of the evening. Often it was not exaggeration to say that Sheridan had a dead man for breakfast every morning. And so,
So the days of the
yeah. But to actually rebuild this town and bring in the actual Wild West actors who restore and recreate the history and live it and have these shows go on. I mean, a live action, real working town of Sheridan in the old West style. But then you also get to experience the rowdiness, the action, because that was Kansas in this area. Buffalo hunters, Indian raids. I mean, and then the next book is on Wyatt Earp. He was a buffalo hunter and also was one of the guys who prepped the buffalo for shipping to the meat houses and got them skinned. And that meant he went to Sheridan. He would also went over to our other town just about 8 miles away called Park because it got its name from being a buffalo park where they got the buffaloes ready to be prepped and put on the railroad to go to market. And so, and you don't learn any of that in the textbooks. You don't learn that Doc Holliday came through here. You don't hear about Bat Masterson and all of his brothers coming through and gambling and helping become police officers and 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 we never ever traveled up to Abilene to see that historic hotel that's now closed down because of the tyrant governor's so-called COVID restrictions. That hotel was in Kansas 11 years before Kansas was a state, and it survived all Indian raids, outlaws, shootouts, everything. But it could not escape the Democrat governor of Kansas. And so reading books is fine, but to really experience Kansas history and to learn it, you need these places rebuilt, reopened, and made for educational purposes. And plus, it helped the economy.
AJ, why do you think that the Democrat and Republican parties throughout the entire 20th century never had taken any initiative to do what you suggest, create these historic sites of interest, make them relive again, so that people remember that Kansas is a unique place? Why do you think that? Why do you think that is?
One is like same old textbooks they learned in school growing up. Either they never knew about these places, or two, they are from out of state and transplanted here and that, oh, I want to move to Kansas and grow a family and become a part of the House or Senate or whatever. And so they're either from Kansas and had the same poor education and didn't decide to. And I don't think this book was published on the. It wasn't published until, okay. So yeah, this book was around in 1988, the one on the ghost towns. So all I had to do was go to a local Kansas bookstore and get it and take it back to the halls of the Kansas Senate or House and do it. But I don't think they really truly either know their history or truly, I hate to say it, love their history of the state to restore it.
Do you think part of that is that the parties that have ruled the state in Kansas believe that everything that goes on in Kansas is really in the cities and the countryside only has farms, and that therefore there is no history in the countryside? Do you think that's their approach mostly?
Yeah. Yeah, because it just seems like we out here are just forgotten, not talked to by the politicians. All they care about is going to the big cities in Wichita, Salina, Hayes, and eastward into Topeka, Kansas City, and all those areas. It's like they just don't really care for us out here because if they did, all the presidential people were like, well, we gotta go out to the western side of the state too, but never happens. And we don't even hear, if someone's running for governor or for the Senate in DC for Kansas, they don't come out here to talk to the people unless, except one, Chris Kobach, he did that, and he still lost. And the DC big guy won, even though he never traveled that year.
Yeah, this is an important thing with voters. You have to realize that who you're voting for is very important. If you vote for someone who's funded by some group that's foreign, you're handing your state over to a foreign power group. But this idea that the countryside means nothing in Kansas must go deep in politics there, because when I visited Kansas back in the year 2000, one thing that struck me was I was like in the middle of nowhere, and I saw a sign and it said I was at an address which only would make sense if you were at the corner of a city that was like 20 miles away. So in the East, if you have a city and you're like at the you're like at 192nd Street East, well, you know that there's 192 streets. You got 192, you get down to downtown center. But here I was 20 miles outside of town in the countryside, and there was an address like that, as if the countryside doesn't exist. It's merely an extension of the city. And I said, this is really strange. You would never see this in the East where, well, because of the colonies are from the 16th, 17th century, every little town has its own character, and it's a beautiful thing. And the politics in Kansas doesn't seem to have realized that. And that's probably why these little towns have never been rebuilt and people forgot about them, or you don't even get taught they exist.
Yeah.
So in what other ways is this kind of like dumbed down education really hurt Kansas, in your opinion?
It's caused a lot of kids to either get into sports, which is okay, I guess, but then or work on going to a major college, then they leave the state and go out east or go out west to California or over or to the East Coast, and they become liberalized and they just forget their identity. It's just like we just got to get out of this area because there's nothing in this area, and like they don't want to do anything about it to bring back the jobs that were once there. I mean, just down the road, my dad said the little town of Angeles even had a store, a post office. I mean, it was a town that had stores and post office and like all the towns around here, but people left. It became incorporated, and just nothing there except a church, and now the school's no longer there, so it's just everything goes away. So,
Do you think that the extremely high real estate taxes in Kansas have something to do with this? I don't know how people in the countryside can pay their house taxes, like the rent, even if you own your own house.
yeah, get to those numbers. Let's see here. Let's see here. So top individual income tax rate is 5.7%. State and local individual income tax collections per capita is $800, and it's a state and local tax burden of 9.5%. So on the income tax collection, it's ranked 34th, and state and local tax burden is ranked 23rd. So yeah, it's 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 worse than some eastern cities a lot.
The real estate tax, you notice the difference there between the personal income taxes and the total tax burden it's 35th in personal, but then if you look at total burden, it goes to 20, you said 23rd. So that shows you how high that the real estate taxes are so high. I'll say it. I know people in the East who wanted to move out to Kansas. They love the country. They love what Kansas has to offer, but they can't even afford the taxes in Kansas. So they're so much higher than they're in the East. Can you imagine that? And when you have high real estate taxes in the countryside, well, then people can't live there, because how can they get a job to pay those taxes? They can't. So they move out, and then they have to sell the house, and the town dies, and the property is actually torn down, because otherwise your taxes would be so high. And you can see this on the real estate market in Kansas. There's so many beautiful farms for sale that have like huge horse training facilities or grain storage facilities, a lot of infrastructure, because that infrastructure is being so highly taxed that even if you owned all the farmland around it, you couldn't pay the tax. And so what do the farmers do? They get rid of their infrastructure, and that makes them more dependent on big agri. And it's just insane why the real estate taxes are so high in Kansas. There's a problem. That's the problem in other states too, but especially in a state like Kansas. Where the money is going, I don't know, because you don't see that.
Yeah, and they're constantly having to fix the roads, so it's not going to road improvement. It's so I don't really know where it's going, and you can definitely tell it's not going into the education, because they've been trying to liberals have been trying to implement Common Core throughout the state, but the locals have been fighting it out here ever since. And I think they defeated Common Core, but still, it's not the best education.
In the state of Kansas, do you have any kind of assistance to go on to college, to state colleges? Do you have reduced fees if you're a resident, like many other states?
Yeah, and certain counties, like in Thomas County, if you're a resident there, and if you can keep your grades up on over a certain level, I think 3.4 or so, you can attend the community college there, either almost free or pretty reasonable. And it's the same in other counties for like the big college in Manhattan, Kansas, the Kansas State University, and I think Lawrence, where the Kansas University is, and a few others.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the big problems in Kansas that the current parties really aren't resolving or doing anything about?
This one's been a problem ever since I was born. The Mexican cartels down in Garden City, Kansas, Scott City, even in Dodge City. If it's nighttime there and if you go on to turn your lights on, you have to be careful, because if you flash your lights, or even just it appears you flash lights to turn them on, that is also a signal to I think one of the gangs down there to start an attack, and they'll do some brutal stuff and kill you.
But Kansas is nowhere near the border. How are several towns been overrun by the Mexican cartels? That seems incredible to say.
Uh, drugs. It's pretty. There's a lot of drugs in Kansas. Um, Marijuana, think some meth houses, and mostly marijuana and meth. But they've been here since I'd probably say the 70s or so, 70s or early 80s, because I was born in 88 and I was getting ready to go to school, and when I was turned 1 year old, we 89, 90 in Garden City, you're like, you're not going to go to school. We're going to move up north to where we live now. And so I had to wait till about when it was 92, 93 to start school, because it was very unsafe in the school systems, even in the elementary schools.
What were they doing in the elementary schools? How could it be unsafe there? You mean elementary kids were beating up other elementary kids?
Yep.
Now, does the state police do anything about illegal aliens, or do they let the whole state get overrun?
They do. They do a lot of. They do some stuff, but just once they come into your city, it's just like city police. But then I don't know what the city police does, but the policing, like everywhere, needs to change. It's like their hands are tied from whoever's the top is.
So there's been actually no effort by either party to defend the borders of Kansas, to defend the people of Kansas from this.
No, and this is and first time it was personal, and when I was getting ready to start my first year of grade school, when I was about it's grade school. But then when I went to community college in El Dorado, Kansas, at Butler Community College, a freshman classmate of mine was kidnapped by a Mexican cartel member, and they later found her body dead.
I don't see how state authorities could even tolerate these cartels after such a thing. They should have organized up, all the police in the state and arrested every member of the cartel. I mean, isn't that common sense? I mean, but is the problem that Kansas doesn't have parties that recognize Kansas as sovereign and should have its own militia and defend itself? Is it that part of the problem?
Yeah.
Do you have a militia in the state?
No, but it's in the state constitution that we are to have one, that we can form one, but I don't think one exists right now.
And it's not like Kansans don't know how to use a gun.
No.
So it's just a complete lack of any political will from these two parties.
Mm-hmm.
And if politicians run for office and they have no intention of defending citizens, what use are they? What use are they? So this is what would the Christian Party of America in Kansas do about this?
Oh, restore the police forces in the cities. No more diversified, no more liberal nonsense. Oh, I'd say we'd go back to some old school policing that we're used to, that took care of the outlaws in the state before.
Wyatt Earp. And do you think Kansas needs a militia? Should that be a priority?
Yep. And also, like, this was a 1902 law in the state of Nevada that if you're willing, able, and healthy enough to ride a horse and use a gun, if you're called to be part of a posse to hunt down these bad guys, you had to join or jail time. It was just time to clean these cartels out, stop all the killings in Wichita that's been going on. Just now, the killings are either domestic disputes or gang related.
You mean they're shooting one another in their own homes and family arguments?
And
Now you
Wichita,
mentioned,
yeah,
yeah.
and Wichita has been one of the most liberal towns in Kansas to enforce the most liberal and strict COVID nonsense. I mean, almost it looks like East Coast town. We got to have a mask on almost everywhere now. $100 fine, all that, and and
So in Wichita, they want all the innocent citizens masked and fined, but the crooks they allowed to do what they please.
yeah. Oh, and there was some purse purse thieves going around in that area yesterday, snatching purses, and the police are asking people for help to identify them. But there's one little problem. The mask for hiding identity.
Yeah. And is Wichita have a Democrat or Republican government?
All Democrat.
Yeah, so the Democrats notorious for helping criminal organizations because they are criminal, but Republicans don't do much about it either. So Christian Party would just end all this craziness, put law and order back, and defend the people of Kansas as Kansas. But you've mentioned there's a drug problem.
Mm-hmm.
How widespread is it, and what do you think the causes of it are?
Yeah. Let's see here. So it's the top 10 counties so far that are most drug infested are Barton County, Douglas County, Thomas County up north, Johnson County, Sedgwick County, and Riley County, and Saline County, Cherokee County, and Crawford County, and Montgomery County. Now, Thomas County is in a very uh, Republican area, but most of these places are growing marijuana, and so even though we're that Thomas County is in the Republican side of Kansas, the west side, a lot of people are wanting to make legal the drug marijuana, and so they are becoming a lot more liberal and seeing how certain reports are saying, oh, marijuana helps with certain ailments like nausea and all that other stuff, but mostly they just want to not be criminalized for having a drug substance.
Aren't you taught in public schools in Kansas that a human being is something more than a dog and there's some higher things to live for, or they've totally wiped out of public education any sense of Christianity and Christian values?
Oh, they wiped that out about the early 2000s.
Have they introduced other things like Satanism and witchcraft?
Oh yeah. Let's see. Halloween parade. They said you had to come as your favorite monster, and well, you know the rest of the story. I think it came home with me.
So you can't dress up as a saint or anything or as a famous person.
Mm.
So they have a very dark view of a children's holiday. And have they eliminated Christmas from the public schools and Christmas displays from public locations in Kansas? Does you have that problem there too?
Not really. I mean, no, not really. But instead of calling it Christmas in the schools, even back in the late 90s, it was called the Winter Holiday Program.
Winter holiday program. I know, isn't that absurd? Thankfully, when I went to school, it was still called Christmas, though that started fading. Um, economically, Are there jobs in the countryside, or is it, and there's almost no opportunity in the countryside economically? And what are the parties doing there?
Well, everyone runs a restaurant or is still trying to keep afloat with the dang restrictions, or so have the sign in the window, help wanted, and so they're still hiring to get more workers in to work the pizza side of the Casey's gas stop to make the fresh pizzas and the sandwiches and everything else. But mostly there's not much there unless you're a mechanic and you go to work for John Deere or some other mechanic shop, or even the railroad had to pull out and go back to Denver to haul the railroad engineers back and forth to the trains. So that's where my uncle is now in Denver, and we have to watch over his stuff. He used to live next door in the original farmhouse here. So, but again, go back to all few hundred ghost towns. If they could be restored and rebuilt and brought back to how they were, and brought in Wild West live action actors and show how it used to be, and make those towns, operational, where it's really an actual town where you go in, get a meal, visit the saloons, and go even to the general stores and purchase things. It would bring jobs back to the area, and it would also bring in people in to learn about Kansas history and to experience it.
Mhm. What are some of the other issues you see in Kansas that a Christian party could make a difference on?
Well, it's been since saying about early 90s to early 2000s when the news started to switch from a more Kansas-based local approach to more corporate media, where their backers or whatever they're called are saying what you need to report on instead of what's going on in Kansas. So I was thinking we need to restore the local news in Kansas to where the news doesn't have any corporate backing, doesn't have to answer back to the big CBS or ABC affiliates in Los Angeles or New York. It only cares about the news in Kansas and everything about Kansas, nothing else.
So you don't hear local news? There's no really any more local news in Kansas?
Hmm.
That's crazy. Kansas itself is like bigger than all of New England. That would be like not hearing any news from New England. That's just absurd. I guess they don't want you to realize all the things going wrong in Kansas. Is that kind of hide it?
Yeah. And and let's see, we have a few reservations for the Kiowa and a few others, and mostly we only hear about their casinos and stuff. But after talking to our South Carolina member and how things are bad down there for the reservations down there, I've been like, I wonder how bad it is on the reservations in Kansas. And I looked around and looked on, see how, and they have horrible drug crimes, they have horrible normal crimes, and Trump is, I don't know if he can do anything, but he issued some sort of executive order to help bring back missing Native American young people. But I think I know where they are because the South Carolina member mentioned that whenever they have children, they are they can either raise them, or mostly they put them up for adoption. And so I don't know if that's part of the Missing People Act that Trump just signed or what, but ever since the reservations came into being from the Indians Affairs folks, they've always had problems, and the government's never kept a word. Even now, they're running low on the American buffalo. I was like, well, shoot, we could, I don't know how many offsprings are left around, but find them, mate them, and restore the great herd of the American buffalo that used to run through up here and up north and down south.
I was amazed to learn in some towns of Kansas, even though this buffalo is on the seal of the state, it's actually illegal to have buffalo in town. You can't even raise them. And so, how's healthcare in Kansas, and what is the state doing right or wrong about healthcare in Kansas, from your experience? You're rather expert on that issue, so what's your view?
Yeah. Well, mostly I have local family doctors. None of them, I mean, they're good and they're really nice, friendly, and they don't have all the technical degrees for all the different specialists, like the doctors in Wichita or out east or out west. And the healthcare, they've been constantly changing it from at my dad's working for John Deere, and even when I was first getting all this stuff we call disabled by the state and the government, what happened with the overdosing of the testosterone shots. When Obamacare hit, first we had the Blue Cross and Blue Shield Silver plan. I mean, that stuff was the best plan ever. The lowest prices. You didn't have to pay for medicine. You didn't have to pay for co-pays and hardly anything else. But then all of a sudden, something in healthcare law for Obamacare, when that sucker hit, and I think we're still fighting all that crud in healthcare. All of a sudden, when disability came up from what I've been going through, I was kicked out of the healthcare. You know, it took a long while to get back and been until realized that I was disabled and the social security income provides healthcare for you. We didn't know that until maybe a year or two ago, that if you're disabled, you get on the Kansas healthcare plan or KanCare, which is good, really good. Medicines are cheap again, and, and good copays and stuff. But I say when Obamacare hit, it really wrecked everything and made things super expensive for everybody, and still they're still fighting all that junk with even fighting junk for getting proper Medicare and Medicaid, and even now hospitals and doctors out here saying, if you got Medicaid, we can't take you. If you got Medicare, you can come, blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, it's just.
Yeah, the Democrats, whenever they touch anything, they destroy it. And the Obamacare was just to turn America into a socialist state, which it's rapidly become under the COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
Any other main issues, or what do you think? Or do you want to speak in general now about Christian Party of America for Kansas?
Well, I know if we can find people who love the history of Kansas and want to restore that history and restore Kansas to what it used to be, where we were free, God-loving country, even territory, even though we had a lot of wild sides in our area, in our entire state. I mean, it just it's if you live out here and you learn about all this stuff growing up, it's almost ingrained in you that and so we need find Kansas members, people in Kansas who truly love their state and want to join this party and help see all we see all these problems. Either the GOP of Kansas or the Democrat Party of Kansas won't touch it, but we have so much history here that's not even being taught. We have all these ghost town settlements that are just sitting here, and we could fix the educational system. We could properly do the roads. We could bring back jobs to the area. I mean, it wasn't that long ago when all these little towns out here were actual functioning towns with stores and post offices, but once everything changed where education was being offered out west and jobs are being removed from this area, people left, and so then all of a sudden love of the state disappeared, I think, where they no longer wanted to fight, no longer had that fight that what made Kansas Kansas. Because to survive out here, you had to fight not only the outlaw, but also survive against all the raids the Native Americans did. And so you lost that pioneer spirit, and we need to restore that to take on the big government that's controlling most of the state from the east side and doesn't really focus on the west side of the state or those other small communities in the south or south central and elsewhere. Just kind of hard to put it.
Do you think the state of Kansas needs a law to prevent non-Kansans from holding office in the state?
Yeah. And even though if you are a citizen born and bred from Kansas, it should also have some sort of litmus test to show that you are truly 100% for Kansas and for Kansas's history, and that you would do anything in your power under the law of the state of Kansas to protect it and keep it alive.
Mm-hmm. Then you would have a totally different view of politics in Kansas. You see what the Christian faith teaches about politics: to love our own land, our own people, and to not just try, but actually aim and dedicate politics to the prosperity of the people, not just the people in the cities and the people of the countryside, because everyone knows that growing up in the countryside is the best place for families. It's not the cities, and but enforcing law and order in the cities for Kansans and solving these problems about lack of security and the abundance of crime, and teaching the youth they have, you know, something more than living like a dog, so they have hope, they have confidence, they have pride, they know they have some spiritual basis to refuse drug addiction. Because this thing they're doing all around the country now with promoting marijuana, it's destroying society. It is not a solution. It is just another step of desperation from political parties that are completely morally bankrupt and don't know even what it means to be human.
Yeah. So hopefully more people from Kansas will see this. They'll reach out to the Christian Party for America. Go to christianpartyforamerica.wordpress.com. I want to thank our new person who just wrote in, I think 2 days ago. I'm not sure how to respond to him because he's an active duty Navy sailor, so I'm still not sure how to respond to him. But thank you for contacting us and wanting to join. We'll see what we can do. Yeah.
I encourage all Christians all around the United States and Christians around the world, form Christian parties. Your faith should form and inform every part of your life. And if you're not bringing Christ outside of your church on Sunday with you into all your activities of life, you're not living Christianity. That's what Christianity is about. And we Catholics, we have this duty more than anyone else because we've been blessed more than any others to have the same faith that Christ taught us down through the ages. So we need to take action. If there's a problem in the world today, it's because Christians aren't forming Christian political parties and working to save their nations.
So please like and share this show. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. And thank you to our new subscribers. I think we're nearing 410 subscribers on YouTube. That's kind of amazing. So please share this video on and off social media. Use your email, all the other social media, whatever they're out there. Use them. Share the video. If you're from Kansas and you like what I've briefly talked about today and want to help restore Kansas and restore Kansas history, contact the Christian Party for America.wordpress.com. The 4 is FOR, so Christian Party for America.wordpress.com. The link will be in the description in the comments below. And this is Order Militaris Radio TV signing off. Deus Volt.
Deus Volt.